good morning, and happy Good Friday. I know that Good Friday is something that is celebrated by the Christian world or the spiritual world, but I just like to think that every Friday is a Good Friday. But this Friday is good for a particularly different reason. And without going into a lot of detail about it, I just want you all to recognize that today is a Good Friday because this is the day that our Savior gave up his life so that we don't have to suffer the penalty and the punishment of sin. And so I'm just going to leave that right there as we go into talking about patterns and habits. And as you all know, those that have been following me for a while, this year we're talking about strategy and structure. Why are we talking about strategy and structure? Because if you don't have a strategy and if you don't have structure, what you have is chaos and a mess. And so we're talking about strategies and structures this year. And my motto for Dr. Ruby E. Powell and Associates is that we empower leadership in life and business. And so whether you're a business owner, whether you work for someone else, whether you are unemployed or underemployed, we can do something about that too. Or whether you're retired, you still have a life that you need structure and order for, structure and a strategy for that structure. And so today we're talking about patterns and habits, or habits and patterns. Usually, when we think about habits, we think about addiction. We think about things that are not so positive. We think about things that become habitual. And so, in my newsletter for this week, I asked the question: are you ready to go from a habitual lifestyle to an intentional pattern that shapes the success of your life? Now, I would love to answer that question for you, but I can only answer that question for myself. When I had things that were habitual in my life, I had less of a productive life than I did when I began to create patterns of behavior or patterns. Now, habits are defined as an acquired behavior regularly followed until it becomes almost involuntary. Now, you might say, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with involuntary behavior? Well, if it's a positive thing, probably nothing. But if it's a habitual thing, typically when habits form, they form for reasons that we don't know about. They form for reasons that we have no control over. I think about when I was a smoker. I smoked for about 15 years, and I'm thankful that it's been 30, no, 20, 29 years since I haven't smoked. And I feel so much better. But smoking became a habit. I try to convince myself every day, oh, I'm not addicted to smoking. I can stop whenever I want to stop. But every time I tried to stop, I found myself going back to it because it was a habitual, involuntary response. When I got stressed, I reached for a cigarette. When I was chilling, I reached for a cigarette. At that time, I was in school. When I was studying, I would reach for a cigarette. So it became habitual. But I needed to change that habit. And fortunately, through prayer, I instantly got set free from smoking cigarettes. And so I'm grateful for that. And it has been 29 since 1994. You do the math. I'm a coach, counselor, and consultant, not a mathematician. You do the math. And so since December 6th of 1994, I have been free from smoking cigarettes. And so I'm thankful that that habit that had formed over the course of 15 years, that I had convinced myself that I could stop whenever I want to. Fortunately, that habit is no longer. I have a pattern now of healthy living. I have a pattern now of protecting my lungs at all costs. And so I don't blame or shame people who still smoke, because some people do smoke because they like it. But it was a habit that was not productive to my health. So I'll just say it like that. But when you think of a pattern, I like to think about pattern as really beautiful, something that you see that's repetitive. And so the definition of pattern is a combination of qualities, tendencies, acts, etc., that form a consistent characteristic or arrangement. You may say that the difference between a habit and a pattern is semantic, and maybe it is. But as you think, that's how you become. That's how you begin to formulate your behavior. And so when I think of habits, I don't always think of things that are necessarily positive. But when I think of patterns of behavior, I think of something that's a quality or a tendency to form a consistent or a characteristic arrangement. So a few years ago, I want to say, I developed a pattern of working out. Well, when I had that pattern of working out, I had a consistent time every day. I did the consistent things every day. Now, might sound a whole lot like a habit, but the result for me was positive. The habit that I had of smoking cigarettes was not necessarily positive because of all of the things that it was doing to my lungs. But when you develop a pattern of things, a combination of qualities, acts, tendencies that form a consistent or characteristic arrangement. When I did not follow that pattern of behavior, my body felt it. Now, full disclosure, it's been a while since I've worked out consistently. And there's a number of reasons, schedule changes and all of that. My body knows, trust me, my body knows real clearly that I have not worked out consistently in a while. Number one, because my body feels a lot more sluggish when I don't get up and move it around. But I've started back to try to get movement in my body every day. So I'm redeveloping the pattern of working out. Now, my body also knows that I've started back working out and that I haven't done it in a while, because after I'm done and I take that shower and I sit down to stretch and relax, or I stretch and then I take the shower, my body said, "Ooh, that feels different." But guess what? It feels like a good different, not like it did when I wasn't working out. Now, you say, what does this have to do with structure and strategy? It has everything to do with structure and strategy, because when you develop consistent patterns, you have a consistent pattern of when you pay your bills, you have a consistent pattern of when you read whatever you read, you have a consistent pattern of doing things that lead to productivity, regardless of whether it's in your business or whether it's in your personal life. It's important to develop habits. So remember, we talked a few weeks ago about building foundations and building structures within your life and in your business. So there may be a time now where you might need to restructure some things that you were doing before. Those restructures may have to come with setting a consistent pattern for making sure that those things happen. I use a lot of different things that help me to stay on course. I use a client, well, it's an automated system that I use to keep up with my appointments, to record my notes, to send out invoices to my clients, to send out notes to my clients. I use a consistent system. And I find myself using that system, that same system, for how I govern my life. I put my bills on there. I do everything, and it sends me alerts. Now, does it put the money in the bank, write the bills out and send them? Mm-mm. That's the part that I have to do. But I don't forget to do them because it reminds me. So in life, in business, develop a habit, or I use the word habit. It's okay, because a pattern could be a consistent habit or consistent pattern. However, reframing your thinking to think about patterns as opposed to habits. One effective way to create new patterns is to become healthier habits is to start small and be consistent. Consistency is definitely key. We talked about consistency a few weeks ago. Choose one specific behavior to focus on and make a plan on how to incorporate it into your daily routine. Over time, you consistently practice that behavior and it will become a pattern of behavior. We can also be helpful. It can also be helpful to track your progress and celebrate your successes along the way. I always say baby steps count. What happens when babies first start walking? They don't get up and start running. They don't even have a consistent pattern of steps. They may take one step and then they fall, or they may take a step and then they grab a hold to something. If by chance your pattern don't grab a hold right away, it's okay. Be consistent. Keep going at it. Keep doing it. Keep making it happen. Okay? This is Dr. Ruby E. Powell. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And begin today by writing down some habits that you want to make patterns. Love and blessings to you.